Hi. Hi, welcome to our podcast.
Hi.
I'm Emily Goodrich.
And I'm Brandy Gordon.
And this is a conversation between two lifelong friends who invite you on their journey of self-discovery, trial and error, and how they practice being human.
Hi.
Hello.
An outpouring of tears last week.
But what I think is really lovely is also the outpouring of support that comes with that, because it is so big to sit here and actually record massive, big things.
There's a couch in the office, and after we were done, I said to Emily, I probably should have laid down, and we should just maybe charge one another. Well, we've said this for our whole lives, but we should charge one another for the therapy sessions that and last week really felt like, with the tears and all the things, that maybe I really should have laid down and experimented with or sent via Venmo the cash for the therapy session.
Yeah, but I think it's good, and I think it's really in the theme of bravery and doing the work to say this is truth. This is what it looks like to say I'm going to do the work. I'm going to stop pretending things are okay, or I'm fine, you're fine, we're all fine, everything's fine, and actually say here's where I could use a little more reflection, or here's where I could heal a little bit more, and I'm in the trenches of it, and let people see that.
Muscles that I'm still learning to flex.
Yeah.
And I want to just say that we sit in a position of privilege. I recognize that at the end of the day, I have the privilege to make good choices and to have the opportunity to take risks and do those things. And I recognize that. Yeah. And I don't want anyone sitting in a similar situation to me to ever say, I'm staying, and that's not okay. Stay if that's what's true and authentic, and build the life that you imagined. And if it's within your current circumstances, keep on keeping on. And I will be your biggest fan, and I will hold all the space I can in that. Because I just don't, this is my experience, not everyone's.
Yep. And that's all we can offer, is we're trying every day. And even our experiences are so, so different. And we're just going to give you that, with the general theme being, just try, just reach for it. Just take a leap, whatever that looks like for you, to create. We have one chance in theory. But this time around the sun, right? We have this opportunity to live greatly and take a leap.
I think that reminds me of something that we've said out loud. It also was in the book Untamed. If you haven't read it, you should. We talked a little bit about it last week, but the idea that we joke maybe in another lifetime, one, as if we have more than one. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but as if we can control what we do in another life, if there is one after this, and why we don't just think, no, this lifetime,
this
I'm going to do this
where my feet are right now. Yeah.
As a coach, I used to say to my players, be where your feet are.
Because that's the only certainty we have, is today, in this moment. Where are my feet and what am I doing?
Be present. Be where your feet are. And
I think that's a good segment into this week.
I didn't even mean to do that, but
that was really magical. Actually, good job.
I'm patting myself on the back if you can't see the camera.
We're going to do a little bit opposite this week and talk about, really, we're going to focus on my last year. And we were just talking when we sat down today of when I actually sit down and think about it, how crazy and magical and just, it's just hard to wrap my head around the last about 15 months of my life and what it's looked like. And in the themes of things that have inspired us, my journey was a little opposite. Just recently, I had someone reach out and say hey, I thought of you. You should really read this book. And I started to read this book, and it put words. So it's kind of like a reversal for you.
Yeah.
It really put words to what the last 15 months of my life had been. And it was just really beautiful and touched me to be like, oh my gosh, there is a name for what I'm doing. There is something out there that can actually articulate my experience so beautifully. Mm-hmm. So I'll get into that at the end, but then I'll share my book that it just came about in an opposite way, whereas Glennon came to you in the beginning.
Mine was in the beginning, and she allowed me to like name and move forward and give courage to the things and the decisions I was making in the moment. So it was more of like a push forward. And I think for you, it was like reading this book, it kind of gave hindsight to and gave language to the spaces that you had already been navigating. And also, I think Sarah, good old Sarah, she gave you just kind of wrapped you in a warm hug a little bit and just gave you this ability to continue shining a spotlight in areas where you still could give yourself grace and love and understanding too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So leading up to this moment where a lot of things changed in my life, I think it's important to give context. You can go back to our Enneagram episodes if you want more background on who we are and how we were living our life. But up until this moment about 15 months ago, I lived my life and it was packed. My life was packed. I was so busy and I was always on an adventure. I was always doing something. I was very busy. I was always pursuing the next fill in the blank.
It was maybe a subconscious.
Oh, it was 100% a subconscious distraction. Avoidance tactic. But I've always been very goal oriented. I was always running companies and had big goals. And once I accomplished a goal, I remember looking back thinking I never even celebrated that. I was always already on to the next thing.
Yes.
So when I wasn't running my company or raising 3 small boys, I was hiking or I was at a sporting event or I was at a concert or I was planning a trip. Like I was just very, very busy.
Yeah, we joke about my period of time where I'm walking a lot of laps in a circle in the backyard, but Emily hiked like
all the time. I was just
60 miles.
Yeah, I was just very, 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 very busy all the time. My life was very full. I always had people at my house. I was always hosting events. I always liked a full house. I always had a door open policy. It was not uncommon to have people at my house for dinner most nights of the week. I distracted myself to the point of no return. That is how I lived.
I just smirked and smiled in Emily's. I'm wondering, but I just think when you look back, it's the same with me, like in this running for distraction, like, yeah, we purposely did these things.
Yeah.
Like it was subconscious in so many ways, but there was like an intentionality of like, yeah, I'm not going to sit quietly, or I'm not going to have space and time with just us.
Yeah, never. I was never, ever alone. Ever. Even when I was driving in the car, like commuting, I was on the phone with people. I was always talking. I was always with people.
Benefit.
Yeah. And so that was the kind of the context leading up into this span of my life. And so I'm going to walk you through, which I really don't, I mean, Brandy knows, and very few people know the ins and outs of like this kind of 6-week period of my life. And it's really looking back on it and like getting ready to say it out loud. It's even overwhelming to think about this 6-week time period of my life. So I decided, which is a whole thing in itself, but I decided in the summer of 2020 to separate from my husband. And
you passed batons.
We did. And that was a big decision. And so that happened, and my husband moved out of the home that we shared. And then I decided, you're going to like laugh when I say all these things out loud because I think we've blocked this all out. But then I decided to pack my children up, and I took them on a trip with my family back to a place where I visited growing up regularly. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, I had asked my husband to take care of the house and watch the pets. And I got a call while we were gone, and he told me that the family cat had been hit by a car and died while we were gone. And so there was that. And I was like, okay, I had just finished telling my kids like, hey, that things are going to look a little different. Follow-up conversation.
By the way, like your cat just got run over by
our precious family cat has died. Sometimes I may laugh during this because like there's really no other words. Then I come back from that and I am trying to manage life. And we have this old house. It had been an endless remodel project. And I'm home with the boys, processing the cat's death. And there's a massive flood in the house and the whole downstairs part of my home floods.
We giggle also because I think we've always joked about having like a mini series for our lives, and what a great episode this would be.
Yeah. So I'm upstairs and I hear my kids and they're like, Mommy, it's raining in the playroom. So I'm like, okay. So I then have to figure that out. And then school starts. So I'm trying to also navigate how to homeschool a first grader, a fourth grader. And I have, at the time, a 3-year-old, and
a busy 3-year-old.
A very busy 3-year-old. And I'm running my company at the same time. And trying to maintain all these relationships I have and doing all the things. And then I have no idea. Apparently there's a freak storm and a tree falls on my house.
Oh yeah. I forgot about the tree.
Yeah.
I think we block these things out.
Because this is a lot. This is excessive. I am being knocked around at a level that I cannot comprehend. I wake up, I'm staring out my back window and I'm like, yeah, something doesn't feel right. Something's not the same. Oh wait, I'm looking at a giant tree on my roof. And I cannot exit now through the back of my house. Now, mind you, old house remodeling, this same exact time, we have removed the front steps to my front door because they are broken and they need to be repaired. So those were removed the day before. So the front entrance to my house was not accessible. Mm-hmm. And a tree has fallen across the back of my house. So we cannot leave the house. And so a few days later, it's almost my birthday at this point, and I'm so frustrated because now I have to coordinate this tree getting cut up and removed, and I'm trying to do too much, and I'm still moving at the speed I've always moved. I'm managing the aftermath of a flooded basement, and I drop a huge piece of this tree on the top of my foot.
And break your toe.
And I break my toe. And I end up in the ER, and they are like, I'm so sorry, but you cannot move. You cannot use your foot for several weeks. And I'm like, that's not a possibility. Like, I am panicking, right? Because I'm like, I have a tree on my roof. I have ripped up walls in my basement. I have 3 kids.
No stairs
in and out of my house. I cannot do this. And I actually ended up staying with Brandy for a few days on my birthday. So it's my birthday. I can't move. I'm staying with Brandy for a few days just to like rest.
That's her version. She calls me and is like, I need someone to take care of me.
I need to be taken care of. I don't know how to shower.
Was a nurse.
Yeah, she took care of me. She helped me up and downstairs. And God love her, she really tried to make my birthday as good as possible. So this is just the span of 6 weeks time. And I'm just trying to figure out what to do. And so I'm back in my home, and I remember I couldn't breathe. I remember I was standing there, and it's like it all hit me at one time, and I could not catch my breath. And I sat on my bathroom floor and I called Brandy, and I was like, I need you to come to my house right now.
Yeah, we have a few times in our life where
that card has been played, and come.
The flare goes up in the sky, and you just stop what you're doing, and you go, and you just sit, and not often things are solved.
No, I don't think we said anything, but I cried, and I was just like, I can't breathe. I cannot figure out how to breathe. I cannot figure out anything. I don't know what to do, and it's funny because I had this feeling, this like deep, that's where maybe my knowing really started to show up.
Yeah.
That it was just time to go home. And I didn't really know. I'm like, I'm home. Okay, and I remember you had said to me, if it is not an absolute priority right now, you need to set it down.
Yeah.
And that's where we really started to talk about the concept. And if it is in the air and it is not a glass ball,
Yeah, set it down.
Set it down. Set it down. And for someone like me, who the way I coped, the life jacket I had reached for was busyness.
Mm-hmm.
Setting it down was
Did we define a life jacket? I don't know if we've defined life jackets, but when you're drowning or things are tough, we reach for things as a coping mechanism. And we've come to this idea in this space of like, there's healthy life jackets that we can grab and put on to stay from drowning, or there's unhealthy ones. And we, up to this point, done really unhealthy life jackets, and we're coping and learning and developing new healthy life jackets. Schitt's Creek was a life jacket that we used, and we'd argue that that's a really healthy life jacket.
This is the time frame. So I couldn't even fight myself on going home and setting everything down. I came to the conclusion in that moment that if it was not my company, if it was not my children, because obviously my livelihood was important. So my livelihood, my children, and the very, very, very few humans that I could let close to me in this moment, it was getting set down.
Yes.
And I did not even fight myself, because I kid you, I could not steady my breath. Mm-hmm. And when I made this declaration, I told everyone, like, I am going, if it is not absolutely a priority, I am so sorry. I cannot be involved or engaged at the level I was.
Right.
And the scary thing is I had to say, I don't know when I'm returning.
Yeah.
I don't know when or if I will be back. I don't know I don't know anything, but I'm going home. And I went home. And I will tell you that first weekend at home, I did watch 25 episodes of Schitt's Creek. And I remember you would check in on me and I'd be like, I'm still watching.
Episode 7.
Yep, still watching. And the very first like temperature gauge I did have was breath, right? There would be times when I'd be like, I'm racing, my heart is racing and I can't catch my breath, or I'm holding my breath, or it doesn't feel steady. I can't find a steady breath. And so those first few weeks, all I knew was, until I could breathe in a way that felt steady, I would be home. And I would not be pursuing things or filling my schedule. I would not engage in anything that was not supporting where I currently was. And that was incredibly hard. And in that space, what was most challenging or devastating to me, which is still something that comes back, is there were a few people who were incredibly significant. I had an incredibly significant relationship, and I had been there for this person for so many things. And when I said, like, I can no longer like lead this, I can no longer
live in this space with you.
Yeah, I can no longer show up at this level. But if you could support me, if you could be there, like, that would really matter. And that was actually the last significant conversation I had with that person. So there was a lot of loss in this space too, of really sitting with what was important and what was true. And
in this I would argue, like, your deepest fear
came true
of not feeling wanted or worthy of someone's time, space, and energy
if you're not
the one giving it out. So you wanted this validation, and then when you took back the giving, or when you took back the energy and you met someone, you'd been meeting people so far on the other side of the room, and now to be able to say, like, I actually physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually can't actually meet you any farther than much at all. So it was significant to say, like, you were doing what you had to do to get yourself into that space, but you also were like, I'm putting myself out there, and I'm gonna feel this is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
And then it did. And it added probably more significantly than physically being able not be able to walk at that time, like this emotional letdown of being like, yeah, these people, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't.
Me on my side of the room when I needed them.
And I actually clearly remember saying, like, I can no longer right now meet you more than halfway, but please, based on the significance of what I thought was a significant relationship, please meet me here. And then it was an exit. And so on. And and with that comes a grief. There was a broken heart in all of this.
Yeah.
And so I stayed home. I just drastically put the brakes on everything with a knowing that it would all be okay, right? Like I continued to work, but I no longer was like, I am building new empires. I am, if you need me, I am taking care of myself. That's what I'm doing. And it seems silly to think back, but I mean, it was incredibly uncomfortable too for someone like me to just say, I don't know. I know nothing right now. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what this means. I know that this is significant. And all I can tell you is I must go figure out how to take care of myself.
Right.
And so in that moment, I actually made a list of here are the things I can do to take care of myself that is healthy.
Yeah, that's an appropriate
life jacket. Yeah, this is what I can do instead of artificially create busyness in my life.
Or to continue on patterns that were creating havoc up to this point.
And that started the most life-changing process of my life. Because I think in that stillness and in this past year, I have met myself in ways that I never knew existed. I'll cry more. Yeah, I mean, there was so many hard times. There has been so many things that have happened. But when I look back, I'm like, what a gift I have been given in this last year. So
we called it the power of the pause.
Yeah.
This was a significant frame of reference for us. Is there was power in the pause. She significantly grew in this time and space. And I just remember also during this time, because there was this pause on everything in life, and everybody was experiencing a pause because of the quarantine and the pandemic and things. But Emily's was on such a deeper and bigger and level because her nature was to not pause ever.
Yeah.
And so to actually force to put the brakes on.
And for the first time be I don't know. I don't know what this looks like. And she's a
Virgo. And if you know anything about Virgo's plan, and checklist. And to not have a checklist is actually anxiety inducing for her, I think, on some levels.
And I have grown to this space of so my year, I did not pursue any of the things that happened. It was very magical once I stopped pushing and I stopped creating my own plan. It's these very lovely stepping stones appeared, and I just kept following to the next step.
The next right thing.
So the first thing I did was I went home, and then there was 1 month, I think the month of November last year, I hiked 60 miles. I was just I'm going to do what I need to do, and I will be outdoors. It was the most quiet time of my life.
Right.
There was no speaking during those 60 miles.
Yeah, if you're going to hike with me, you can't speak.
Yeah, it was silence. It was quiet. It was removing the energies of other people and the noise and all the things. And really, there is a terror of sinking in, right? Of finding that stillness. And after that, right during the holidays, I decided, as I'd been fixing up this old home for years, and it was one leak after another and one problem after another, it was time to sell my house with no plan. Mm-mm. And unfortunately, as my best friend sitting next to me, the plan was, I'm going to sell this house. I'm going to move in with you until I figure out what happens. And so I moved in with Brandy for 6 weeks with my children. And then we were led to the most magical home. I don't know, I don't have rational answers looking back.
No.
But I moved my children about 45 minutes away from where we were living. And we live in this lovely home with a big yard that my kids can play outside, and we can walk to the beach. And once we were settled there, I think that's when was like, okay, my breath returned. Like I am breathing steadily, because once again, it's an undertaking on your own to sell a house, pack it up, and move 3 children to a brand new city.
She also could breathe probably a little easier because she moved from a house that had a dump smell to the ocean.
Yeah. I moved to like a really pretty scenery. It was really beautiful. It was lovely. It was exactly
what she needed,
what I needed, and
what the boys needed.
And I remember that first month, rain, shine, no matter what, I stood at the ocean. I stood at the water. I remember, my heart still hurt. And it was really in the stillness, you find all of these emotions you have hidden in there, deep in there, because you have been busy distracting yourself. I remember I would stand at the ocean and find peace. I would stand at the ocean and cry. I would just stand at the ocean. There was times that I would call Brandy and be like, I don't know what this is. I don't know. My heart hurts so bad. I don't know. And I remember very delicately and gently, she had to say, like, I think this is grief.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is what your grief looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to sit in that discomfort for the first time in my life, with the realization that, like, sitting with it and naming it and loving it and honoring it, you move through it. And you're not just stuffing it inside of yourself anymore.
Yes. There's lots of, if you've ever been to therapy, they talk about, like, if you name something, it takes the power out of it. And I think pain is powerful in that if you don't honor it and give it space and time, and I think that Sarah, this book we're going to talk about, is just so eloquent in how she speaks about this, but you're going to experience it again and again and again and again until you give it its rightful time and space to get through it.
Yes. And I argued myself on this for months. Like, this was not just me leaning in and embracing the heartbreak or the grief or any uncomfortable. I argued it. I wanted a timeline. I wanted it to be done. Okay, I have felt it. I have seen it. I need it to go. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to have these emotions anymore. Right. I don't want to have that. It was exhausting. And it wasn't until actually this maybe 4 or 5 months ago where I came to the very peaceful decision that my heart will hurt until it doesn't hurt.
Because and we're going to do an episode on grief, but, like, there's an expectation or a timeline where someone's like, well,
you should just be over it.
You should be over it.
This shouldn't hurt you anymore. The situation's done. This shouldn't bother you anymore. And once I shifted to a space of acceptance, and just saying, like, I see this and I love this and it's here and it'll be here till it's not here.
Yeah.
And then it finally,
your breath cup
moved back through me. Yeah.
In this arena, your breath kind of came back to
you. And I mean, I have been led on the most magical, I have, without planning or anticipate or forward think, I have gone to 2 magical trips to the desert this year. You name it. I have
Sedona and Zion.
I've gone to Sedona, and I have gone to Zion. I have gone to therapy. I have met with shamans on mountaintops. I have worked with healers. I have read books. I have bought a hammock and I lay in my hammock. I have bought a bike. I mean, I have had the most fascinating year of my life.
So other than just, like, honoring the pain and sitting with it, like, what would you tell someone that was you a year ago?
I was just thinking about this today, like, gosh, if I could go back to myself a year ago and have a conversation with myself, it would be one of, like, ease and compassion and patience, and to say, like, you think that doing nothing is, like, the worst way to solve your problems.
Yeah.
And it will actually be the most magical gift you will ever receive.
But isn't that everything in life? Like, every single time we really try to control something, it doesn't turn out as magical as it could, because the limit to our own imagination is we're self-limiting of ourselves. You know what I mean? And I think good old Glennon talks about controlling isn't love.
No.
Like, by controlling ourselves, even, we're not really loving ourselves. Like, we're trying to just avoid pain and avoid conflict and avoid things that make things easier. But like, the right kind of heart is leaning into it.
And and I would say sinking. I like her terminology, sinking into it. And the other thing to layer in, although I'm always like, I'm fiercely, quote unquote, independent, I had been in a relationship, back to back relationships since the time I was 16 years old.
Right.
I was married at 25.
Yes.
So I spoke with someone and the advice that they had given me was, get to know yourself in each season and give yourself 4 seasons of knowing. And I thought that was beautiful. And it was not anything I set out to do or I calendared as a Virgo. I usually would have. But I think after you get settled and you become more comfortable with the solitude, you also start to get to know yourself deeply, and you become that home base.
Yeah, that you're your own touch tree.
You are your own touch tree, and you start to figure out how to give yourself the things that you need. And I was seeking in other spaces, right?
Yeah.
I have figured out how to deeply enjoy myself on my own, and how to light myself up, and how to listen to myself deeply, and how to be absolutely okay with, I don't know what comes next. Like, I really don't know what comes next. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the next step on my journey looks like. But I do know, as I have been in this space of stillness and fierce independence right now, I know how, when I am uncertain, what that feels like, and how to give myself the time and space to listen to myself before I make a decision, which is very new.
Yes.
I used to be very reactive.
She was very ready, fire, aim.
Yes, 100%. And I think
ready, aim, fire.
And I think what most people are getting to know this version of me is like, I don't know right now. So I'm going to give myself the time I need to think about it and see how I feel. Because I do think as we get busy or we need to make decisions on the spot, we can't hear ourselves. We can't find that knowing. So we need to return to that. And it's interesting. I just recently got back from a trip to the desert again. And it's one of those spaces where you're like, well, it was quiet, right? It was quiet for days. There was a day that all I saw was very few people, and it was beautiful. And returning this time, it was interesting. I don't know geographically what the future holds for me, right? Like, I don't know where I belong. And I do know at this point, like, it's okay. I'm going to go where this journey takes me, and I'm going to be led to where I'm supposed to be. And I think that in this, I have truly built a relationship with myself.
Right. Yes. And it's been beautiful to watch.
Thank you. And I think it's also been weird because, or I don't know if weird's the right, but maybe interesting to watch on the outside of being like, we don't know exactly what she's up to all the time. She's in a hammock, she's walking, she's at the beach. Like, it just seems very quiet, maybe. And that's funny because I can see when I get a little stressed, or I move from my center when I get pulled within too many directions now.
Right.
And so it is like, oh, I got to take time. Like, there's no decision that is on fire today. I need to go back to the quiet. It's something I crave now.
Right. Yeah. We actually have to pull her out of her shell.
Yeah. We might be getting to a problematic space here soon. I tried to go to a sporting event over the summer, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much for me. So yeah, I mean, I'll keep you posted on
her hermiting.
Yeah, on that. But there is such a intense peace that has been found and I've become very selective in what I fill my time with.
Right.
And so with that, an old friend of mine, when we were chatting at the end of summer, said, "Have you heard of Sarah Blondin?" And I said, "I haven't." And I read quite a bit. And so he said she has a book, and it's called Heart-Minded, and I think you would like it. And I listened to this. So I'm a big fan of listening to books. And if I
was gone for a second, but I'm back.
If I really love it, I really love it, because then I'll buy the hard copy of it. And then I bought the hard copy of it, and then I listened to her read it again while I held it in my hands. And then I proceeded to recommend this book to anyone who would listen to me. Strangers, anyone. And I cannot recommend this enough.
The gal at the grocery store is now more woke because she got it.
Everyone. So if you are going to dive into this book, please listen to Sarah read this book.
So it's an incredible book in the sense of like, it's very warm and welcoming, and she gives so much. But the thing about it is that if you do listen to her, between each chapter on the audiobook, she does a meditation with you, and they are like so warm and so inviting into yourself. And it's
stunning. Like
it's
beautiful.
Endearing, and her voice is just magical. Whether you like women like I do, or you just are like can appreciate anything, she's just her voice is inviting and lovely, and she calls you dear one. Like that's her like affectionate like an invitation into the space, and so beautiful to go to sleep to. Like are you going to talk a little bit about the what's the app that you use?
Oh yeah, she's on the Insight Timer app.
Insight Timer.
And all of her meditations are on there that you can listen to. It's like poetry. It is spiritual poetry. It is the most beautiful tone and words that we could sit here all day and talk about how amazing it is until you hear it. We can't do it justice. So I highly recommend. And it is so simple and lovely. It's just so peaceful. And so I started to listen to this, and I got to her chapter, what she has named Soul-itude, in place of solitude. And I started to cry when I read this or listened to this chapter, because I remember sitting there thinking, this is what I've been doing. This is it. Like she has written the words of my soul and of this past year. And it makes sense to me now, because I didn't quite understand why I was quietly spending time with myself or sitting in things that felt painful. I just felt deeply called to do it without guidance. And so at the end, to have this fall into my hands and have her in the most beautiful way explain the gift of soul-itude.
I know. And what a beautiful word, soul-itude.
Yeah, it
is. It takes away, I feel like it takes away the negative connotation of solitude, right? It's all of a sudden, it's like, it's a purposeful word. It's solitude.
Yeah, I'm doing something productive for my growth here, opposed to just being alone and shutting the world out. Yeah. Yes.
But isn't that true? If we just think about the connotation of it, we often think time to yourself is selfish and they shouldn't do it. But I think what we're both finding, and I'm still trying to flex this muscle, I'm not great at it. Emily is perfecting it. I think her craft is beautiful at this point with this, but it is okay. It's necessary. It's necessary. It's not just you get to do it. It's actually to thrive, we need it.
We absolutely need it. And I'm trying to integrate now a daily practice of this. But she talks about a process she went through. She moved to the country. She did a 2-year journey of really stillness and quieting, and what that looks like when you commit to the practice of Soul-itude. And in that journey, she talks about the necessity of your heart will break open. Your heart, when you silence the busyness, when you still your mind, when you sink inside, your heart will break open, and inside you will hear your truth.
Because she again hits home on this idea that pain is necessary. Pain gives you information. Pain pushes you to the next thing. If you don't experience the pain, if you don't sit in the stillness, if you don't allow yourself that time, you're never going to get through it.
Never. Because for me, my biggest growth, or my biggest moments where I saw like I need to heal these pieces of myself, were when my heart was broken open.
Yes.
And with that, I could finally meet myself.
Right.
With love.
Yes.
Because what we're avoiding in the busyness is the shame and the guilt and all the things that we relate to a broken version of ourselves.
Yes.
And so when you sit in the stillness and the quiet and you go on this journey with yourself, you get to meet your authentic self and all the bits and pieces of it, and hold it with compassion and love, and then really start to move through things.
Yes. And then also listening to your body's response in those things, like anxiety. What is anxiety? Anxiety is like, actually, people have anxiety, and I'm not discounting it, and it has a place, but she explains it in such a lovely way of this. It's a fear of surrender, I believe she calls it. It's like this, I'm not surrendering to the ideas that I'm worried about. Like, just let those happen, sitting up, rather than trying to change the outcome of it.
Yes.
Or, I don't know how exactly she, but it was beautiful, I remember.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about your heart must break open so that you can sift through the patterns and the tendencies that have been created to keep you from yourself. And I loved that idea of, when I am incredibly reactive, when I do react with a defense mechanism, or when I am deeply playing out patterns that I have been playing out most of my life, it is just a barricade to keep me from myself.
Yes.
And truly knowing who I am. And I think that was where the really hard work for me took place in this past year, was like when there was no hiding and there was no distraction, where I could sit and say, oh my gosh, these patterns that I've had, or my behavior, or the things that have kept me from myself, and really do the work to let go of those things.
Right. And she talks about to deny suffering, or to deny the pain. It holds you actually absent and away from your heart.
Yeah. And it prolongs the pain.
Right. Which seems so counterintuitive. Like, in your mind, you think, I should run from this. Rather, it's asking you to sink into it. Like,
yes.
Step into it in order to move through it.
And when that finally clicked, when I just said, okay, I'm not going to fight this anymore. I am going to deeply surrender to my grief, and I will feel this grief until I don't. Yep. And I don't know when or what or how that will happen, but that is where I am. Is my heart hurts. My heart hurts today, and I don't know when my heart stops hurting.
Right. And there's, like, you said this to me when we were talking. I was in Hawaii, and I was listening to her on the beach and trying to, I had been anxious and having a really hard time prior to being down there. And we talked about this embracing and honoring. And you said, as a 7, it was so big to think about this idea of not only embracing, but we talk about acknowledging it or honoring it and accepting, but really to embrace it, to really say, even in the anger, it's so relevant. It's so idea of, as a 7, you would avoid it. You'd resist the suffering. You do all the things, but gosh darn it, we have to sit in it
and love it
and
say, this is okay. This is this grief is interesting and complicated and sad and lovely, and it's the experience that brought the grief contributed to who I am today.
And by embracing it and loving it and feeling through it, it's information.
It is information.
Why was I sad? Why am I sad? Let me sit in like where am I wounded? Where am I hurt? Let me heal that part of me in order to then move on to a more beautiful version of myself, or return to the hurt person that I was, or that I was before the hurt.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that when I start to think about the magnitude and the simplicity of the past 15 months, it is a gift. It is such a magical, magical gift it is the year I think, I'm like, I did the least.
But it was the most.
But it was the most.
Yeah. And sitting from an outsider watching, I would totally agree. Like the amounts of times that you sunk in and said like, hey, I avoided this in my life and this is why, and I'm going to work through it. And it wasn't just stuff that was happening right now.
I went all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, like I think we process things from our childhood during this time, and we're going to explore a childhood, like how to heal a childhood wound or how to work in that space on another episode. But it has been magical to watch, and you do need to give yourself credit for how kind and graceful and how much love you've given to yourself, because it is lovely.
Thank you,
dear one.
Please
read the book.
Yeah, read the book.
Dear one. Heart-minded is what it's called.
Heart-minded. It says how to hold yourself and others in love, and I think that it's so beautiful. And also, she's all of her meditations. I cannot encourage you enough, if you are going to integrate one thing into your life, if you listen to Sarah Blondin's meditations, if
nothing else, she'll soothe you right.
Yeah, she is and if you can't sleep, like listen to her. She is the most soothing, beautiful. She can just shift your vibration so quickly into a magical, magical space. So please check her out. If you have listened to her, let us know.
She chiseled this hard bound, Emily is such a big heart, but sometimes she doesn't present it to others. She has melted. She has melted this person that shut away a heart and has just opened her heart to flourish to others. And it's been beautiful.
It's definitely impacted or put words to my last year. So check it out. Let us know if you have previously read the book, what your thoughts are, or if you do, check it out. Once again, listen to her on Audible. She is amazing. And that is the story of my past year.
We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Thank you.